In business today, three things to know. First, Alibaba, boom. The largest IPO in history hits the market. We'll look at the company, the hype, and how it's now worth more than $200 billion. Then, Scotch, not on the rocks. The fallout from Scotland's no vote on independence and how the UK still has work to do to keep the kingdom united. And worth it? The cost of college and the real return on college investment. Rise Exchange for Friday starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Meet the new kings of the IPO. The founders of Alibaba rang the opening bell on the New York Stock Exchange and then watched as the shares of the most anticipated public offering in years skyrocketed. The shares of the Chinese e-commerce site debuted at $68 and closed over $93. Baba closed up more than 38% to $93.89, with a market cap topping more than $220 billion on its IPO debut. For the market as a whole, well, the Dow hit another record, up 15 points to 17,281. The S&P 500, the NASDAQ did pull back just a little bit. So what is it about Alibaba that turned a former English teacher into a billionaire? Bobby Rebell reports.
Alibaba's IPO may be the biggest ever, but when the party is over, it will have to get down to the business of selling itself. The vast majority, 88% of Americans, haven't even heard of Alibaba, according to an Ipsos poll conducted for Thomson Reuters. Forrester's Zia Daniel Wigder.
I think they need to better understand the U.S. online shopper, the different features that are going to be important to that shopper and how they are different. China has been very price-driven in terms of online shopping to date, and it's very difficult to compete long-term purely on price. So they'll be looking to build out a superior customer experience to win over online shoppers in these mature markets where consumers have extremely high expectations of the e-commerce sites.
Alibaba's CEO Jack Ma has said that after the listing, the firm will develop the business in Europe and the U.S., saying Alibaba is an internet company that happened to be in China. Wigder says his likely move is to buy his way in.
In order to enter a market like the U.S., it would be very challenging to do it without some sort of major acquisition. You would have to put a huge amount of money toward it. It's very expensive to acquire customers here and to create a brand name from scratch.
Alibaba has been building a U.S. presence through investments, which include 11main.com, its first direct-to-consumer website unveiled in June. Its other big U.S. investment is ShopRunner, which rivals Amazon's Prime service, offering two-day delivery from retailers. Columbia Business School's Kinshuk Turath.
But logistics is a very big issue. And that is, I think, where the battle will be. Alibaba realizes that. I think that is why they are investing in startups like ShopRunner, which are essentially logistics and delivery-based startups.
Alibaba will also have to address fears about fraud, a concern of U.S. consumers doing business with a Chinese company.
As is the usual case on these IPOs, few individual investors got in. But is this a stock worth taking a shot at now? Chris Nolter, senior writer at The Deal, and joins us here on Rise Exchange. Welcome to the program, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Few Americans have ever heard of this company and therefore might be a little surprised that a Chinese firm is now the biggest IPO in history. What is Alibaba, and what happened today? Was it either a surprise or worth it?
Well, think of Alibaba as like an eBay based in China. It's an e-commerce company, but they set up marketplaces, so they allow businesses or consumers to sell to. They allow businesses to sell to other businesses or to consumers. You know, kind of a different model than Amazon, where Amazon is selling the merchandise itself. And it's not a surprise that it traded above its IPO listing price of $68 a share. Mm-hmm. We saw a lot of demand for this building up through the roadshow. And also, Alibaba's value has been what's been pushing Yahoo stock up and supporting Yahoo stock.
I'll talk about that in a moment because Yahoo is a significant shareholder of Alibaba. Alibaba, unlike other tech companies, though, this is a profitable company with a real business.
It is a profitable company. Often with a tech IPO, you have the big growth story, and Alibaba has that. But they've been profitable since fiscal year 2011. And that's different than a lot of these companies. It has an 80% market share in China. And so there is a lot of hype and associated with this IPO. There is kind of more of an underlying business than you often have.
Is a $220 billion valuation, though, appropriate? It's more than twice as big as eBay. It's bigger than Amazon.
Well, I think that a lot of the analyst targets were between $80 and $100. And so you're seeing today investors push that up right to the bull, it was above $99. So it's right up to the bull scenario, I think. And I think that's getting ahead of where it is. Those are a lot of these are 12-month targets, and putting it in there, putting it at that level right now, I think is just a little too high.
Are we comfortable with the transparency of this company? As you know, they shopped it around to different exchanges. There's some concern over Chinese companies and how transparent they are. Have they met what we would consider the appropriate level of disclosures in financial reporting?
Well, I think it's difficult to say, to kind of read beyond the SEC filings. There are some kind of complicated elements of the business. And I think it's difficult to really anticipate, how these problems may materialize, whether they will or not. There certainly were some Chinese companies that went private because of scrutiny of their
So what is next now for Alibaba? Is this a company that, can Americans go online right now and use Alibaba? Is it a company that is going to be expanding beyond China?
It is going to expand beyond China. That is definitely part of the plan. And I think that when you look at this enthusiasm about Alibaba, that's a question that you have to have. If it goes into Europe and the U.S. wholesale, do those margins suffer? It's going to be expensive, and is that high growth, high margin company still going to be the same?
I want to ask you about the founder, Jack Ma. He's a former English teacher, dropped out of college. He had a line where he said he wanted his company to compete with those on Silicon Valley, and he is a rather flamboyant Chinese CEO, something we don't usually see. He pulled it off, I guess.
Well, he did pull it off. Certainly in terms of the valuation that he's gotten. And I think that whether he succeeds in the U.S. Is still up in the air. And also, Alibaba has a lot of ambitions that go beyond e-commerce. They've invested in a lot of things. They made a dozen acquisitions or investments just this year. It
looks a little like Amazon, doesn't it? He a little bit has the personality of a Jeff Bezos.
I think so. And the investments range from a soccer team to auto share companies to TV and film production in China. It's a little hard to gauge exactly where the ambitions go with this company.
Chris Nolter, senior writer at The Deal. Thank you so much for your insight today.
You're welcome.
Coming up, Great Scott. They said no, so what is next? You're watching Arise Exchange. Informative. The U.S. economy is on the right path, and the wizard of the Fed is leading the way.
We started our companies originally to create something that made a positive difference.
Compelling.
I became very successful, not allowing myself to be average.
Our favorite person of the day, when we pick one person who grabbed our attention, and not for the right reason. Yeah, he sort of lost all business. Investors came back from the long weekend, tanned, rested, and ready to buy stocks. Entertaining money daily, Arise Exchange. Welcome back to Arise Exchange. The UK woke up Friday morning to find the kingdom intact. By a 10% margin, the Scottish rejected independence, but 45% still voted to secede. So what is next? Arise News correspondent Chris Mann now joins us once again. Chris, the mood on the streets in Scotland today?
One of relief, I think, for the majority of people, because this was a big moment. It would have been a gamble to go away from security of Great Britain. One of the most powerful economies in Europe. Small, 5.5 million people, so who knows what would happen. So relief for many, disappointment for almost 50% who wanted independence, who were very vocal and passionate about it, but have lost out. But today we know the United Kingdom continues.
Chris, we'd like to come back to you. We're going to put you on the phone in a moment. We're having a little bit of your Skype, so let's get him on the phone, and we will come back to Chris in just a moment. Instead, we'll turn to some of the business stories making headlines across the nation right now. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell spoke publicly for the first time in more than a wrestling field violence, held a news conference where poured out policy.
I'm sorry. I got it wrong on a number of levels. From the process that I led to the decision that I reached.
Goodell did not announce any specific changes, but said he has not considered resigning. Apple's new iPhones finally hit stores around the world. People have been lining up since last week in some cities for the big day. Don't they have jobs or something to do? Given the time zones, Australia was actually the first country to receive the next generation iPhones. And the first person to buy an iPhone in Perth after waiting online all night immediately dropped it accidentally during a TV interview. Luckily, the phone appeared to survive. You think he would have to go to the back of the line to start all over if he needed to get a new one? One more reason to delay retirement, you might not be able to afford it. The latest report from the Center for Retirement Research at Boston College reveals an alarming trend. The gap between the rich and poor when it comes to retirement savings has widened significantly over the past decade. America's wealthiest saw the value of their savings grow by 24%, while low-income households watched their savings shrink by 20%. It's being hailed as the largest climate march in history. Activists from around the world are gathering in New York City to take part in the People's Climate March this Sunday. Over 1,000 groups have signed up to participate, including schools, unions, environmental organizations, faith groups, and businesses. The march is timed to coincide with next week's United Nations Climate Summit. Hopefully, participants will walk and not drive to the event. While Scotland voted to uphold more than 300-year-old union with England, another historic vote in Scotland bucked tradition. The Royal and Ancient Golf Club of St. Andrews voted overwhelmingly in favor of allowing women members for the first time in its 260-year history. 85% opted to accept women. And what does being named by Forbes magazine as the highest-paid supermodel get you? Apparently audited. The IRS is auditing Gisele Bundchen, who is said to have earned $42 million last year. All right, we're going to go back now to Chris Mann, who we believe is on the phone in Scotland. Chris, let's start again because I'm sorry you were breaking up. What was the reaction on the streets in the country today?
Yeah, sorry about losing the line there, Andrew. It's probably because all those Scots in America are talking to their grandmothers in Scotland. We've used up all the broadband. Listen, there's a great sense of relief today, I think, by the majority of people, because we were on the precipice. We were looking down, and it's obvious that over 50% didn't like the look of the leap. There was another 45% who really wanted independence, who thought that, yes, we could do it. But the decision is no. And as part of that, almost as a byproduct, Scotland is a whole new deal with the United Kingdom. In order to keep the Scots on side, the British government, the three main parties, have made huge promises to Scotland that they will get more money, they will have better use of their own tax money, that they'll get a larger share of the oil revenue. So
what about
you
Chris?
might not be able to hear us, but we're laughing today.
You think you pulled it off, is what you're saying? It was a big ruse.
I think by default, that's what's happened. Yeah.
But okay, so what are some of the things, though? What about political change? Money is one thing, but what about voting rights, et cetera?
Well, I think what's happening is we're heading towards a federal Britain. It might not be immediately, but we're going there. This is the idea that you devolve away from Westminster. You see, the southeast of England is this vastly wealthy part of Britain where there's huge amounts of jobs, all the power is there. And the rest of Britain is saying, hang on a second, we want more of that pie. It started in Northern Ireland. There's been sort of a devolution in Scotland. And now what they're talking about is further devolution to the regions of England.
Yeah, there is talk of a vote in Northern Ireland and Wales coming up, right? And I'm wondering maybe this is going to give them more power to affect change as well. And we are going to see sort of a federalist United Kingdom, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, they have that system in Germany, as you might know, in other countries. Italy is similar. The problem is, of course, with that, there's more bureaucracy. There's actually more cost. Europe loves bureaucracy and paperwork and all the rest of it. It makes things less free, but more local. So there's a bit of a compromise there. But there's no doubt at all that parts of Britain, you'll have it in America too, parts of Britain are very poor. There are areas that feel hugely disenfranchised, that they're ignored by the wealthy parts of Britain. And those are the parts that voted for independence.
Okay, Chris.
The places that voted for independence.
Thank you, Chris. We got to go, but terrific job this week. We appreciate it. We'll have you back on when the next vote for Northern Ireland or Wales comes, and hope to see you soon. Chris Mann, Arise Scotland correspondent. Turning to the economy, a measure of where the American economy is headed in the next 3 to 6 months improved again in August, but slightly. The leading economic indicators from the private research group, the Conference Board, increased 0.2% in August, although at a slower rate than in July. With more on the economic data and some of the markets is Chris Lowe. He's chief economist with FTN Financial. Chris, welcome to the program. Very busy day, very busy week. We'll start a little bit with the Fed. I was confused by what happened because the equity markets liked what Janet Yellen said. The bond markets thought that she was talking about raising interest rates. I didn't hear any of that, but those markets did.
Well, that's just it. It was deep code from Janet Yellen on raising interest rates. And
she has perfected this, hasn't she? She's learned from Ben Bernanke. She's learned from Alan Greenspan.
But she did at one point, she came out and said, she was asked how much slack is in the labor market, and she answered the question. She said between 0.25% and 1%. That's an indication that the unemployment rate probably, once it gets under about 5 3/4, she'll be willing to raise rates. And I think that's the message the bond market heard. The stock market was focused on, don't worry, it's a long time.
Don't worry, right now we only care about today and tomorrow.
Well, my goodness, that could be the first quarter of next year. I think that's what the bond market saw.
So do you think, well, what is your interpretation? People are saying June, but do you think it could be the first quarter?
I think that's what she thinks today. But I think when you look at their forecast and then look at the data, how it's been coming in, they see 3% growth from here on out. We've actually not experienced a 3-quarter stretch of 3% growth yet in this expansion. So it's pretty unlikely.
Yeah, it's been a slow go. What do you make of the leading economic indicators today? And can you describe to us how important the LEI is?
Well, look, the LEI is one of those numbers we don't tend to pay a whole lot of attention to until we get a string of negatives, and then it's really important. So the fact that it was up today for the 9th consecutive time, something like that, even though it wasn't up very much, the direction is what matters most. Looking at the components, I like that the orders components were up. Those are solid indications of business activity.
And we got some news earlier in the week that businesses are a little bit more optimistic.
Right, exactly. And then, the flip side, stock market down a little bit. Well, we all know the Dow closed at a record high again today, that's likely just a blip.
Yeah, and that's something to really watch because the market has been on a tear. What went on in Scotland, that has to make people feel pretty good.
It does. The biggest impact from our perspective was on currency. The pound sterling weakened a ton in the last month. Just people moving capital out of the way. Yeah. Exactly. So the pound has recovered somewhat. It's not going to be a really vibrant recovery because, as we just heard, there's Ireland, there's Wales, there's parts of England. My goodness. But markets don't much like change. because investors like to be able to anticipate, and it's so hard to see what would have happened had Scotland left.
Okay, Chris Lowe, Chief Economist with FTN Financial. Have a good weekend. Thank you.
You too, Andrew. Thank you.
Ahead, a lawyer whose Photoshop skills were too good is our favorite person of the day here on Arise Exchange.
I think media and reporters have a lot to answer for.
AIDS, hunger, people not having running water, the things that we just take for granted.
I think the most important issues in the world today are education and poverty.
Terrorism and war, I guess, is always. It's always an issue, and the quality of life of certain groups of people in certain areas.
I think inequality.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
I think that people in America do care about what happens throughout the world.
Global warming is probably something that has to be addressed sooner rather than later.
From Somalia and the genocide there, and that's something people don't know about. They have no idea the brevity of that situation.
The first thing I think about when I think of Africa is like war and famine and disease.
And right now with the tsunami that happened or the earthquakes in, Japan, we always look out for other people.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
A special Scottish edition of Liquid Lunch, things that make us want to drink. A retailer was so excited about Scottish independence that it sent out an email congratulating the Scots for voting yes, saying, quote, as a little patriotic inspiration for the newly independent country, take a peek at our selection of blue saltire-inspired products. The email was sent out over a flag of Scotland. Of course, the Scots, in fact, voted no. Oops. The London-based furniture retailer had to send out a mea culpa saying, quote, Scotland, we love you, and hope no offense was caused, and they put the Union Jack behind it. And there's this guy. A Shanghai man decided he needed an iPhone 6 so badly that he raised money the best way he could think of, by renting out his girlfriend for platonic reasons. Wei Chu held a sign up that offered to, quote, share his girlfriend for about $1.64 an hour. That's below the living wage, folks. Or $8 for the whole day, or $82 for the month. The sign specifies that there could be no, quote, funny business, and that the rent paid can only be for studying, eating, and playing games. He reportedly is offering to serve up his girlfriend so he can get money to buy the new iPhone 6. No word on whether his girlfriend has approved of the proposed transaction. And all of this takes us to our favorite person of the day when we pick one person who grabbed our attention and not for the right reasons. Today it is a California lawyer who tried to drum up business by showing photos of herself with famous celebrities, except they were fake. Svetlana Sangari may have her law license suspended after she was caught using Photoshop pictures of herself with politicians and stars. The mocked-up photos appeared on her professional website, leading potential clients to think she knew the celebrity. She didn't. Take a look. Here she is with President Obama, Kim Kardashian, and the Clintons. The list goes on and on. I think I might do that. In total, about 50 bogus photos were posted. Now, a state judge overseeing a disciplinary hearing is proposing to suspend her license 6 months for allegedly confusing, deceiving, and misleading the public. Further, Sangari was told 2 years ago to remove the photos. In a response to the court's accusations, she calls herself a prominent political donor and philanthropist that's based on an email from the Obama campaign asking her for an additional $3 donation. And so, Svetlana Sangari, for practicing law and a bit of chutzpah, is our favorite person of the day. Coming up, if you are a parent, have you thought of crowdfunding to pay for your kids' college? You're watching Arise Exchange. Last week on Arise Exchange, the 13th anniversary of 9/11 unfolded the way the others have, with memorials and moments of silence. The Ray Rice fallout, the cost to the Baltimore Ravens and the NFL.
For them to deal with it the way they did, they clearly dropped the ball.
You know what we need protection from? People who wear Elmo costumes. The government forcing people who dress as SpongeBob SquarePants to get licensed. Maybe they need to say shrink. I don't know about SpongeBob. Watch this week for more Arise Exchange. The average student graduates college with $33,000 worth of debt. In fact, since 1978, the cost of college has jumped more than 13 times, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's due to skyrocketing tuition costs, even as enrollment declines and graduates struggle to find jobs. Andy Lockwood is the president of collegeplanningGuru.com and author of How to Pay Wholesale for College. He joins us now to talk to us about how saving money is a key part of this and whether a college degree is even worth it. When you look at, we have a graph here of how the cost of college has simply outpaced almost all other items that we pay for: medical care, shelter, even inflation as measured by the CPI. Why have we continued to see these increases?
Well, first, I just want to start off by saying this is actually me, not a Photoshop. Okay, just for the record. No, the real reason that college costs are going up is really, there's probably a couple of reasons. The main one is that colleges rely on funding from the government by way of student loans going to students who then increasingly default on them. So there's easy money being given to the families and then on to the colleges. They have no incentive to rein in their costs. That's why you have all these crazy dining facilities that serve 5-star steak and sushi and all this type of stuff, and these crazy water parks.
I went back to my college, Hofstra University, and we used to just have this one little cafeteria when I went to school, and now it is a food mall.
Right. So at many colleges, you have these lazy rivers and other amenities, like a country club, to hang out at. The other reason is that college costs go up just because these colleges feel like they have to compete in this arms race to lure more and more students to them. So that's why they're offering these amenities, and it's marketing.
And now, 48% of college grads, 2 years after college, still have not found jobs in their chosen profession.
Or that require a college degree at all.
Interesting. That requires
they could be at Starbucks or something with a
and by the way, some colleges count that as a job, by the way, for their alumni. If colleges were a private business and had to sell a product, they'd be failing in many ways.
Yeah, well, they have no incentive to rein in their costs, and they have no one really looking over their shoulders to see if they're providing a good product. And at some point, that has to change. And I don't know when that's going to be.
Do colleges compete at all on price?
They won't ever come out and say that overtly, but they negotiate. I've seen some crazy negotiations that colleges do. They just don't call it that. They call it appealing. So they don't like to be thought of as mercenary businesses, but they are businesses.
Peter Thiel, the co-founder of PayPal, has said and started a program encouraging people not to go to college in some circumstances. Is he right?
You know what? I don't think, well, two thoughts on that. Number one, I don't think everyone should go to college. And number two, I think that's a pretty bad business model for a college guy for me to announce on your show here. But yeah, I mean, if you're not a good student in high school, for example, if you're in the lower 40% of your class, I'm not so sure you're going to turn it around and succeed in college.
Let's talk about ways to save money in college. You've done a book about it. We see something called crowdfunding out there to try to get people to pay for your college. What are some of the tips you would have? Yeah,
crowdfunding is interesting. I mean, I can't really see that taking off so much because, I mean, honestly,
it's gimmicky.
It's gimmicky and it's a buzzword, but and who would really want to? I mean, what's the benefit to a donor, for helping someone go to school? And then if you're the kid accepting the money, now you have these people kind of supervising you, getting into your business, judging where you're spending your money. Should you have gone out and spent money on beers instead of textbooks, that type of thing. But the main reason is going after scholarships. The biggest money is in the college endowments themselves. They bribe students in order to raise their their rankings in the U.S. Student Enrolled Report.
By getting better students. By encouraging them to come.
Correct.
And if they take out loans, is the government charging too high interest rates on these loans? I mean, a congresswoman has said that we shouldn't pay for higher loans for colleges than we do for our cars.
Yeah, I think that's Elizabeth Warren that you're referring to. And what's interesting is that she contributed very much to the increased cost of college. When she taught at Harvard, she made $350,000 per year for teaching one class. So I always question these types of experts.
That's interesting. Yeah. I did not know that.
But the government actually, I think, charges too little for interest because what's happening is that they're subsidizing so much. They're pouring so much money into the system.
So do you think then, we have about 20 seconds left, do you think we need to fully change the model of how this is funded for students?
Something has to happen, and it's going to be a combination of schools going out of business. There's going to be, I predict, mass consolidation. I predict, more and more of these online courses.
And by the way, smaller private colleges are in trouble.
Yeah.
They are suffering. All right,
Absolutely.
Andy Lockwood, founder and president of collegeplanningGuru.com. We'll have you back on to talk about small colleges that are struggling. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks for having me.
Next week on Xchange, the United Nations Assembly kicks off in New York City with heads of states from around the world in attendance. Arise News will have complete coverage. That is starting Monday here on Arise. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Thanks for watching. Have a very nice weekend. We'll see you on Monday.